Good morning, everyone. This is Amy Lemley with John Burton Advocates for Youth. We're right at 10 o'clock, and we are going to give people just a minute or two more to join today's web seminar on the Burton Book Fund. So thank you all for being here, and we'll start in about a minute or two. Thanks again. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for being on today's web seminar about the Burton Book Fund for the 2018-19 academic year. Today, I'm going to be sharing some information about the organization and the book fund. Then we're going to be hearing from Alexis Berries. Alexis is a former foster youth and a youth advocate here at John Burton Advocates for Youth. Alexis has been really instrumental in so much of our policy work, helping make the case to the legislature about the need to improve a range of services for current and former foster youth. And she's a very active ambassador on our Burton Book Fund as well. So she's going to talk a little bit about her experience with it and just kind of share her point of view. And then we're going to turn it over to Carolyn Ho, who's a project associate here. For the purposes of this webinar, you should all know that she manages the Burton Book Fund. She is the person who is the most important contact you have around the Burton Book Fund, whether you're a transitional housing provider, whether you are a campus representative, a bookstore, a foster youth. She's really the person who can answer your questions and help you navigate the process. She's put a tremendous amount of work in today's web seminar and to the real redesign of the program, and so we're really excited to share that with you. But before we jump into it, let's just take a few moments to make sure that everyone has the information to participate. The call-in number is on that slide, and then Carolyn has developed really a new and improved Burton Book Fund webpage. It's at that link, and this presentation, along with the recording, will be emailed to everyone today. You can go to that page right now, and what you're going to find is a frequently asked questions. You're going to find the whole process outlined in a high level of detail. You're going to find contacts. You're going to find information about the history of the Burton Book Fund. It really is a one-stop shopping for everything Burton Book Fund related, a big improvement over what we've done in the past. And then, as always, we really encourage you to submit your questions live. So when you have your question, don't try and remember towards the end. Put it in that question panel, send it, and we will make sure to answer it at the conclusion of the web seminar. The question we get most frequently is, will this presentation be available? It will be. And in fact, we have since learned we can now make the PowerPoint available at the same time that we're doing it, and we are going to do that in the future. But we didn't know how to do it today. We've since learned that, but we know that that's people's preference, is to be able to have it as you're getting the information. So we'll incorporate that into our practice for the future. All right, let's look at the agenda. So we're going to start with a little bit of background on the Burton Book Fund, and really cover all the basics. Who's eligible? What's the process? Important things to keep in mind, and questions and answers. And I think we'll do that all in hopefully about 30 to 40 minutes, and leave lots of time for your questions so that you feel well equipped to go back to young people you serve and connect them with this important resource. I want to start, however, just kind of backing up, because many organizations, they know us because we do policy work, or they know John Burton Advocates because we maybe do some training on your campus or with your county. And then others really think that all we do is the book fund. And so I did want to take this important opportunity, regardless of what door you're walking through, to work with our organization, want to just take a moment to say the three things we do. We certainly do policy and advocacy. We work every year in coalition with other organizations to change state policies to improve the foster care system and to reduce youth homelessness. And I want to just say thank you. Many, if not most of you on this call have submitted support letters. You've done testimony at hearings. You've done district meetings. And this relationship we have with you is what makes our advocacy possible and successful. Going over to technical assistance and training, we're very committed to working to implement policies that we've been part of advocating on behalf of. An example of that is Senate Bill 1023, when the legislature and Senator Carol Liu established the KFES program, also known as Next Up. So as many of you may know, we were very active in a learning community of the KFES campuses on implementing that, creating an environment where different programs could share their lessons learned, and really seeing that move forward in an applied way. And then what we're here today about is really direct services, and that is our Burton Book Fund, and that's the main direct service program that we have. We do other things. We have done some reproductive and sexual health in Los Angeles. We had a critical needs fund, but the main way that we support young people directly is the Burton Book Fund. And so we try to have these three, parts of our work aligned and coordinated. And so if you are only working with us on one part of it, we hope after today and in the future you'll be curious about engaging in the other parts of it, because there's a lot of work to do to improve services and support for homeless youth and for youth currently and formerly in foster care. And we believe these three components are what are going to hopefully get it done. So all right, with that, let's go right into that direct services and talk about the Burton Book Fund. So in a nutshell, it is a program that offers current and former foster youth financial support to offset the high costs of their course materials. We know that is a significant part of their expense. So first and foremost, it's getting those financial resources to the young people. However, we also want to encourage contact with support professionals on campus. We know many of you on the call are working on campuses in the capacity of supporting foster youth. And so we are trying to drive current and former foster youth to you. We're trying to use this program as a rationale for connecting with that great work that's happening on campus. And then thirdly, we're really trying to supplement the work that's happening on campuses, in housing programs, and child welfare agencies. Young people in foster care or formerly in foster care have so many individuals in their lives. And we know that those of you on the web seminar are doing really important work with them. And so this is a small, but we hope helpful supplement to what you're doing. So if you are a CASA and you're working with a 17-year-old thinking about post-secondary ed, we want to supplement what you're doing by potentially giving you an opportunity to tell that young person that, hey, when you go to college, not if you go to college, there's a program just for you to make sure your books are covered. So we want to be that extra little cherry on top of the great work that you're doing. And so how are we trying to do this? This, frankly, as a policy person, I've said, wow, $200, $250, what is that really going to do? And so I want to really lay out why we think that this supplement is something that can genuinely improve retention and degree completion. And again, the first part is increasing the contact with the campus support professionals. This is an evidence-based approach. The MDRC, which is one of the premier national organizations doing hardcore outcome evaluation, recently published a policy brief to identify what actually moves the needle around degree retention and completion. And we know the more touches vulnerable students get with campus professionals, the higher the likelihood of them staying in school and completing school. And so we're trying to, this program is trying to add 2 more touches. The first touch is that initial application, and the second touch is a mid-year reallocation, and we're going to talk more about that. The second way we're trying to actually move the needle on retention course completion is maximizing financial aid. And the evidence on this is rock solid. The relationship between financial aid and degree completion, retention and completion is virtually 1-to-1. And it's particularly true for economically vulnerable students like foster youth. And so a second way that we're really trying to have this program achieve that is to ensure foster youth access all financial aid they're eligible to receive. And so we'll talk more about that. But this a new feature of the program is a requirement that applicants complete the FAFSA. And we believe these 2 elements actually can, have in combination, again, not $200 in and of itself is just, not much. But if we look at it more holistically about driving students to the excellent work that's already being done, and then ensuring that we're using this touch point as an opportunity to really maximize financial aid, that we can have the measurable improvement on retention and degree completion. So that's what we're trying to do for the student. And what are we trying to do for systems change? The first is we're trying to increase contact between the child welfare system and the campuses. Now, as many of you know, in the old days, the system ended at 18. And really, the child welfare system's, kind of job was let's get them across the high school finish line, right? And that was a very good goal. We now have care to 21. We have 9,000 non-minor dependents in California who are college age. And yet, how can we increase that contact between the child welfare system and campuses? The colleges are ready and willing and able to support these students, and yet we still don't have the connections. They're building here, they're building there, and I know many of you on the web seminar are working very hard to forge and sustain and expand those relationships. But one thing this book fund is trying to do is if you're a social worker on this call, if you're a probation officer, if you're a CASA, to know about the campus support programs for foster youth, because the reality is they exist on all 9 UC campuses, on I believe almost all except for one of the 23 CSUs, and a significant proportion of the 115 community college campuses. And as professionals, we need to be the ones that are forging that connection to make sure that more than a warm handoff happens, that we're going on campus with the young people and we're building those relationships. So that's one system change that we're trying to catalyze by the book fund. And then the second one is many of you do this already, but we want to invite every Burton Book Fund recipient and every campus who participates to participate in our advocacy to improve policies. We are a small number of people in office in San Francisco. You are the ones who know about the policy changes that need to happen. And so we want to work with you to learn about the best practices that can be translated into policy change. And then once we identify them, we want to work with you to tell the legislature, foster youth are college material. With some tweaks to the system, we can help foster youth permanently move into economic security and really change their life trajectory. But we can't do that without your help. And so the way we're trying to change the system with the Burton Book Fund is to create a conduit of communication and engagement between our organization and you. And and some of you out there might be saying, hey, we just want the Burton Book Fund, back up. I didn't sign up to change the world. I don't think many of you think that because we get so many incredibly generous offers. So if that's not what you want to do, that's not a requirement, but it is an invitation because when you speak and when the students in your program speak, people listen, legislators listen, they're inspired, and so that's one thing we're trying to do. The next thing, so I'm just going to go over these briefly, and then Carolyn's going to go into a lot more detail. First, I want to thank many of you for participating in a very in-depth analysis that our organization conducted in the spring, and it was led by a graduate student intern from the UC Berkeley Goldman School of Public Policy. She interviewed you all, she surveyed you all, she surveyed the book fund recipients, she did research, and then she did it all again. Because we were trying again to go from a charity model where we just give you $200 and we don't really try and connect that with college retention and completion or a policy agenda. So how can we really use this opportunity to its maximum effect? And how can we improve the service? Because we know that we were not administering it as well as we could. And so these are the changes that we have in store for this year. And the first one is one we heard really loud and clear from you when we interviewed and surveyed you, which is this first come, first served model we have is pretty frantic. And so in the past, we would open up the Burton Book Fund, first come, first served. You would submit your applications, and then there'd be a mad dash to get a hold of young people. Now, this process really disadvantaged schools that are on a quarter system, and it also really disadvantaged students who are struggling to get enrolled and make connections. And so this year, we're moving to a model where each campus is going to get a specific number of awards. You'll kind of tell us how many you need, and then kind of based on the overall demand, we will tell you how many you get. And then you can take your time thinking through the students that you have and identifying the ones with the greatest needs. And it's going to be, I think, more planful and less chaotic. The second, the change to the right is a new award level. We used to kind of prorate it based on enrollment, anywhere from 150 to 250. These are very small gradations, and administratively, it made it pretty difficult. And so we are changing to a new award level of $200 for each eligible student. And we know even at this award level for a full-time student, or potentially even a student enrolled in 6 units, it's not enough. But we're again hoping to chip away at that expense. I think one of our most significant ones is a requirement to apply for the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. What we learned when we surveyed the current book fund recipients is a not insignificant number of our book fund recipients we were not getting any financial aid and had not applied for financial aid. Now, for those of you who are representing a CSU or a UC, that's probably incomprehensible. But in the community colleges, we identified a not insignificant number of students who were getting the BOG fee waiver, but had not applied for the Chafee, the Cal Grant, or the Pell Grant. And so, that's leaving a considerable amount of money on the table. And so we are saying, for this funding, we do, want the young people to apply to complete the FAFSA. And this is very much in alignment with our California Foster Youth FAFSA Challenge, where the likelihood of staying in school and completing your degree if you're getting no financial aid is very, very low. And given that these resources are on the table, we want to really support young people in accessing them. And so that is an additional change in the program. Over to the green box, we're also expanding the use of funds. In the past, it was strictly books, but we got very clear and strong feedback that you wanted anything that's on the syllabus as a required course material. We know about 13% of the young people who get in the Burton Book Fund are in career and technical education programs, and they need different kinds of supplies. It may be a certain manual, it may be a certain kind of equipment. So if it is on the syllabus as a required course material, the Burton Book Fund can cover it. The next one is a reassignment of awards mid-year. What we learned through our analysis and through all of your feedback is that many young people who get the Burton Book Fund in September are not there in December, and they actually never used the award. All told, about a third of the young people were not using the award, and that money was being left on the table. And so that's not what we want. And so Carolyn is going to be talking about a process where in the middle of the year, if a student hasn't used their Burton Book Fund, and you are going to be authorized to reassign it to a student who's on your campus who meets the eligibility criteria. And then last but not least is just an all electronic process. We want to not kill trees if we don't have to, and it's also designed to be much simpler and more straightforward. And so we're really excited about that, and that's something Carolyn has led the implementation of. So that is it in a nutshell. Carolyn will describe it in greater detail, but before we do that, I'm really delighted that Alexis Berries, who is a youth advocate, is able to be with us on the call and able to share her experience with the Burton Book Fund.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Amy, for that very helpful information. As Amy mentioned earlier, I am a former foster youth. I entered the foster care system at the age of 2 when both of my parents became incarcerated. Because both of my parents were given life sentences, I went into long-term foster care, which ultimately resulted in being a dependent for 18 years. My foster care experience consisted of numerous placement changes and constantly having to attend a new school. So due to the instability, I quickly fell far behind, and I always felt very discouraged that I could or would never catch up to my like peers. The constant instability that foster youth experience impacts the focus on schooling dramatically, and most often it becomes easier to give up than to buckle up and face the uphill battle. Fortunate enough, I had a great support team cheering me on, and most importantly, never losing faith in my success. So I pushed to not only catch up, but was encouraged to pursue higher education. My first year of college was rough. The transition was a total culture shock. I realized very quickly, like as an adult, that everything costs money. Taking a class, eating lunch, and not to mention the unbearable amount of money that was demanded for supplies to succeed in the courses. It was, again, very discouraging to attend school, especially now as an adult, and even harder without a college support fund. So for me, the book fund was a vital tool in helping to set aside emergency funds and reduce some of that financial stress. I was a recipient of the JBAY book fund last year. A mentor of mine introduced it to me and helped me through the process, and even really helped me sign up. While signing up, I was also connected with my campus foster care liaison department, where I was offered a variety of other benefits, including a unique on-campus support drop-in center, where I could go and network with other peers, sign in, stop in for food, relax in between classes, and even obtain support from the staff filling out FAFSA and other grant opportunities. So ultimately, the book fund process helped to bridge that connection gap and enhance my college experience. So I look forward to this improved resource, and I hope you do too.
Great, thank you, Alexis, for sharing your experience. We're happy to hear that the Burton Book Fund has helped not only offset some of the financial burden, but also connected you with the support professionals and network on campus. So thank you, Alexis, for sharing your experience with us. So before we dig in, I just want to first take a moment to let all the wonderful campus and bookstore representatives know how much we appreciate everything that you've done. Without your support and assistance, this program wouldn't be possible. So just wanted to say thank you. Like Amy said, I'm Carolyn Ho, and I'll be your central contact for the Burton Book Fund this year. So you'll see my contact info noted on the slide there. If there's any questions or issues, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So this year, we've allocated $250,000 for the Burton Book Fund, and with awards level set at $200 for each eligible student, we'll be able to provide a total of 1,250 awards for participating campuses to provide for their students. So we have the 1,250 awards available. Let's talk about who's eligible to receive it. So this year we have 4 eligibility requirements that youth must meet to participate in the program. These requirements are the student must have been in foster care on or after their 13th birthday. They have to be enrolled in at least 6 units for the semester or quarter. The student has to not be participating or eligible to participate in their campus's Next Step program, formerly known as CAFE. And the student must have completed the FAFSA and California Dream Act application for the 2018-2019 academic year. The first 3 are the same requirements as previous years. The fourth, as Amy mentioned, is an addition to really just ensure that students are accessing all the financial aid that they can receive. And it will be the responsibility of the campus representative to verify that the students meet the eligibility requirements. And since the financial aid application requirement is new, how should you go about verifying? The campus rep can verify the student in one of many ways, including checking web grants, asking the student to provide verification, or consulting with the financial aid office. We will allow exceptions for this eligibility requirement for students who wouldn't be eligible for financial aid and therefore wouldn't derive any benefits from submitting a FAFSA or California Dream Act. So this would be in cases, for example, like not meeting satisfactory academic progress. And so when the students sign up, they will have to note why they didn't submit the FAFSA or California Dream Act on the student application before being approved. I mentioned that one of the eligibility requirements is that the student cannot be participating or eligible to participate in their campus's Next Step program. That's because the Next Step program is a wonderful resource for many foster youth students, offering various support services. It provides direct financial assistance for things like course materials and textbooks. So we want to make sure that our small pool of money supports students who aren't eligible to benefit from the CAFE support. And recently, the Chancellor's Office announced that 6 additional college community districts would receive CAFE funding, bringing that total number of CAFE campuses to 41. And so you'll see here the list of the current 41 campuses receiving funding to administer this program for this academic year. Governor Brown added an additional $5 million to the CAFE budget, which is expected to go into effect July 1st. So we do expect that there will be additional campuses to this list before the start of the academic year. Now, it's not to say that CAFE's campuses can't participate in the Burton Book Fund, it's just that their pool of eligible students will be smaller. So we do expect the number of Burton Book Fund awards requested from these schools to be smaller as well. To be eligible to participate in the Next Step CAFE's program, students have to be in foster care on or after age 16, also be under age 26 before the start of the academic year, enrolled in at least 9 units, and then be able to meet the terms of their EOPS mutual responsibility contract. So the Burton Book Fund can help students who are outside the realm of these eligibility requirements. So for example, if they entered foster care on or after age 13, but then exited it out before age 16 and so forth. So let's go through some eligibility examples. We have Rebecca. She's 22, was in foster care at the age of 15, is enrolled in 5 units for the fall semester, is not participating in the Next Step program, and submitted her FAFSA. So is Rebecca eligible for the Burton Book Fund? No, Rebecca will not be eligible because she's not enrolled in a minimum of 6 units. Next, we have Marcus. Marcus just turned 19, was placed in a legal guardianship at age 12, is a full-time student taking 12 units this fall, is not participating in CAFE's program, and he submitted his FAFSA. Is Marcus eligible for the Burton Book Fund? Unfortunately, he's not, because he was placed in legal guardianship at the age of 12 and was therefore not in foster care at age 13. Next, we have Linda. She's 27 years old. That she aged out of foster care at age 21 through age 12, is enrolled in 9 units for the fall semester. And although she's attending a campus that offers the KFES program, because of her age, she's not eligible to participate in that program. And she submitted a FAFSA. So is Linda eligible for the Burton Book Fund? Yes, she is eligible because she was in foster care at age 13, is taking over 6 units, not enrolled in Next Step, and she also submitted her FAFSA for the academic year. The last one, we have Tom, who is in foster care between age 13 to 15, is enrolled in 6 units for the fall semester, isn't eligible to participate on his campus's KFES program because he wasn't in foster care at age 16. He didn't submit his FAFSA because he didn't meet satisfactory academic progress and is therefore ineligible for federal financial aid. But because he attends community college, he did, however, submit his College Promise Grant application, formerly known as the BOG fee waiver. Is Tom eligible? Yes. Tom is eligible because he was in foster care at age 13, taking the minimum required number of credits, isn't eligible for KFES, and while he didn't submit a FAFSA because he doesn't meet SAP, he did submit his College Promise Grant application, showing that he accessed all his financial aid available to him. So now that you're aware of the eligibility requirements to the program, let's walk through the steps of setting up the Burton Book Fund on your campus. So applying for the Burton Book Fund is a simple 4-step process, which you'll see on the top level there. To get it set up, you'll need to submit a campus representative agreement, which outlines the rules of the program, and that's where you'll submit your request for the number of awards. Along with that, we'll also need a bookstore agreement. Both of them need to be in by July 13th. After that date, we'll review the documents and the number of requests and send an email to each campus rep confirming the number of awards they will receive by July 27th. And at that point, campuses will be able to give access, or they'll be given access to the online student application to award their students. Once students complete their application, JBAY will review the submissions and send out email notifications confirming their approval. And then the students can start purchasing their course materials and textbooks then. And so I'll discuss the other steps in the process in detail later, but as you'll see, we'll request a mid-year funds update from campus reps to see if any awards need to be allocated. And then students will be able to use their award up until April 4th of 2019, at which point the Burton Book Fund will close, and then we'll send out an evaluation survey and request all remaining invoices for bookstores to be sent in by the end of April. So let's go into each step in further detail. So first, a campus rep and a bookstore agreement will need to be submitted by July 13th. In the campus rep is where, again, you'll submit the number of awards you'd like to receive for your students. Many campuses have either a coordinator from their foster youth program fill out the form. Other campuses may have a foster youth representative in the financial aid office. In whatever the case, whoever fills out the campus rep agreement will be the main Burton Book Fund contact for the students on their campus. And then the bookstore agreement is to be filled out by the campus bookstore representative or manager. It outlines the agreement that JBAY will pay up to $200 for each approved student. It outlines what the funds can be used on, which is anything listed as required course materials. Outlines the invoicing schedule and rules of the program to make it run smoothly. And agreements can be found on the Burton Book Fund page in the link posted. And again, I will send out the webinar recording and slides and any associated links after the webinar. So for those filling out the campus representative agreement, how are you supposed to determine how many awards you request for your campus? Some things to consider are how many eligible foster youth attend your college, how many of those are ineligible for any other sources of funding to purchase course materials, how many students on your campus used the book fund last year, and what is your capacity to administer the Burton Book Fund. It's sort of our expectation that the number of awards that you request will be allocated and spent. So it does take a little bit more management. When it comes to the mid-year funds update, that will require you to talk to your bookstore administrator about the current use of funds among your students, reaching out to each student to let them know how much they have left, and if they plan on using their remaining or whether they disenrolled, and then reporting that to us for reallocation. Sorry. Okay, so now you submitted the documents and by the July 13th deadline. Now what? JBAY will review the number of applications and award requests, and if the number of awards requested is greater than the 1,250 that we have available, then we'll adjust based on the number of foster youth enrolled by college, and then the distribution of the students across the campuses that are participating in the Burton Book Fund. So we hope not to have to cut the number requested. Please keep in mind that it is possible to only receive a few awards. By July 27th, each campus representative will receive an email containing the number of awards they will receive, a personalized sheet about their program, their campus pin, which will be used for verification on the student application, and then of course the link to the student application. So at this point, you have the link to the student application. Campus reps can vet students based on the eligibility requirements of the program and help sign students up to receive their $200 Burton Book Fund. All students should complete the online form in person with a campus rep. Like Amy said, we really wanted to use this program as an incentive to create relationships and engagement between the student and the foster youth representative and other programs on campus. So we ask that you don't share the link with the students. The form will require the campus rep to enter their PIN and signature for verification. Not that we shifted from a first come first served method to one where there's guaranteed awards for campuses. The campus rep doesn't need to feel rushed to sign students up during summer. Quarter systems aren't left out, and you really have the opportunity to weave this sign-up process into your school schedule, maybe during orientation time or scheduled programming or advising. So let's go over what's on the student application. The first part will ask questions like their name, confirm their eligibility, contact information, demographics, and some enrollment information. And the next part will be the student will review and sign the student agreement. It just essentially outlines the rules of the program, like when they can use the funds by, what it can be used on, and by signing, the student confirms that they've reviewed and agreed to follow the rules. And the last part is that the campus representative will sign off each student application. It confirms that the campus rep has verified the student's eligibility and that they reviewed the rules with the student and connected them to any additional resources that they're eligible for. This is where the campus rep will sign their signature, enter their campus PIN, and then submit the application for approval. JBAY will review each application that comes in. We ask that campus representatives allocate their awards by October 31st. And each student will receive an email within a week notifying the student, along with the campus rep, that they've been approved. If we notice an issue, we'll be sure to reach out to resolve it. Once the student receives an approval email, the campus rep can inform the bookstore to let the student begin purchasing their course materials on our account. And campus reps should keep a log of all their approved students so that they can check up on their award use in December for the reallocation. So that pretty much sets up the Burton Book Fund, what happens after. Like I said, in December, I will be sending out a request for a funds update from all the campus reps via our online form for each student's award and whether they would like to reallocate unused funds. This will require you to get an update from your book fund administrator, reach out to each of the Burton Book Fund recipients to let them know that they have X amount remaining and confirm whether they like to use their remaining funds. This also offers an opportunity for students to, number one, know how much money they have left for the Burton Book Fund and troubleshoot any issues they have accessing the book fund. So this is, the touch point and opportunity for engagement between foster youth campus reps and students. And so if funds are to be reallocated, we'll provide you with a new student application, and the student submits their application. They'll be notified of their award, and they can begin using it upon JBAY approval. Campus reps will have until the end of February to reallocate the unused awards. So then at that point, the Burton Book Fund will close on April 4th. Any unused funds will be forfeited at that point. And then we'll send out a survey and responses are requested by the end of April. And we'll also ask for all remaining bookstore invoices to be sent in by then as well. So that's pretty much it. So just to recap, some important things to remember for the campus rep. The Book Fund is a program with limited funding. The number of awards to each campus will be allocated based off the number of requests that come in by July 13th. So if you and your bookstore administrator miss the application deadline, unfortunately, you won't be able to participate for the Book Fund. So make sure to get your applications in. All Burton Book Fund awards will be allocated to campuses by July 27th. And once campuses award to students, they will have until April 4th to use. Again, students can only use their Burton Book Fund award on items listed under their course syllabi as required course materials. Any charges outside of that scope will be the responsibility of the student, campus program, or bookstore. And lastly, to keep in mind, just a reallocation fund update request in December. And I'll send out communications about that closer to the time frame. And for the bookstore, just also to make sure to get your agreements in by July 13th, and that all accounts and invoices must use their full name, John Burton Advocates for Youth. Only required course materials can be charged to the Burton Book Fund account. We ask that you submit invoices twice, once by December 31st and once by April 30th. You can invoice us more frequently if needed. And then we ask that you send invoices to us via email or mail. Our preference is email, and they can be sent to our Operations Finance Manager, Brandon Roberts. His email is noted on there. And finally, funds are awarded in the fall, can be used throughout the academic year, or can be transferred to new students in January 2019 through the reallocation process. So you may hear from the campus rep or from JBAY about closing some student accounts and setting up new ones in January. And last but not least, all remaining funds after July 4th will be forfeited. And there you have it.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. So lots of really good questions, and I think let's try and get to as many as we can. So here's one, and please keep them coming. I think there's a little bit of a question about the reallocation process. Oh, hang on one second. Pause. Oh. One is, so can you give an example of that? Let's say a campus is awarded 10 Burton Book Fund awards and 2 students never use it and actually disenroll. How would a campus handle that situation?
So in December, I'll send out an online form to submit an update of all your students' individual awards. And then based off of that, I'll respond back that, okay, you'll have 4 awards to give out to your student. And then I will provide a new student application, and then you'll be able to sign up students that way.
Thank you. These are such good questions. So here's one that I'm going to answer. So students don't need to be meeting SAP in order to qualify for the fund, and the answer is absolutely not. And, you know, in talking to many campuses, you know, when you think about like who is being prioritized, who is, you know, because there's a lot of there's 17,000 students, foster youth attending college in California. And so how do I pick the 11 that get the Burton Book Fund? You might want to look at who's not meeting SAP because they lose everything, as you all know. So they don't need to be meeting satisfactory academic progress. So thanks for that question. Another question is, so each eligible student will be awarded a total of $200 for the 18-19 academic year, correct? We're on a quarter system, so students will not be able to request $200 per quarter, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, so it is $200 and for the academic year. And just to fold another question in there, that does not, it does end in April. In years past, it has gone into the summer, but it is not going into the summer. It's only for the 2 to 3, depending on if you're quarter or semester academic year. So here's a great question, which is, I'm from an FFA. How do I direct young people in our program to get assistance from the Burton Book Fund? And so as part of the follow-up materials, we're going to be providing a list of all the campus support programs, and so by campus. And so if you know that a young person, you know, attends Laney Community College, you know, one is there may already be a connection. The young person could already be connected with that program, and they may already be getting the Burton Book Fund. Who knows? But if it's not, that's a great opportunity to make that connection. And also, you know, for those of you who are KP's campuses, we're hoping this is going to drive eligible students to your programs, because on the call and in our outreach are a lot of THP plus foster care and THP plus programs. Every individual who participates in those programs are KFES eligible. You know, so they are a great way, you know, if you connect with those programs, 100% of those students are KFES eligible in terms of the age in care on or after 16. And so, you know, look at that roster, find the school that your student attends, and then you know, make that connection. So the next one's for you, Carolyn. Through the collaboration with the bookstore manager, would they be the ones to be able to give the campus rep information on what awards have not been used?
Yeah, so the bookstore administrator will be the person that provides information about the current use of funds.
Great question. Next one is, can the real allocation be used for only new students or students who got it in the fall semester?
It would be for new students.
All right. Can the campus rep application be found online or will it be mailed?
I will be posting both the campus rep and the bookstore agreement on the Burton Book Fund page after the webinar, and I'll also be sending it out afterwards as well.
This is a good question. They're all good questions, but I'm fascinated. Do you have to have spent a certain amount of time in foster care?
No, they do not.
But they do have to have been in care at age 16, or excuse me, 13 or later. So if they were in care at 13 and they were reunified at 13 and a half, that's fine. But in care at some point on or after age 13. So this is a question, I think it's a similar one, but are students eligible for $200 for both fall and spring semesters? No, it's just $200. All right, here's one. If a student who would have been eligible to participate for Next Up was terminated, would they qualify for the Book Fund?
Yes, they would.
Okay. So it seems like there's quite a few questions as to $200 per semester or per year, and so I'll just answer that. That is $200 per academic year. So $200 per academic period. Here's a question for the reassignment period. Could funds be reassigned to a student that already had the funds in the previous semester? So that answer is no. It is really intended. It's a $200 maximum benefit per young people. Will there be a Q&A document available regarding the administration of the program?
Yes, there is already a Q&A document on the Burton Book Fund page. And we'll also add to it based off the questions that have come in for this webinar.
This is an interesting question. Some of our students attend more than one campus within the same district. How do we award those students? So I guess I'll answer that it is only, I guess it's going to have to be some level of coordination. I mean, our system won't allow a student to get more than one award. And so only one award, per student is allowed. But if you're working with a student and you're in a multi-campus district, maybe just be clear with them, are you going to apply through our program? But that is going to require some coordination, particularly for like a district like Los Angeles that has, I think, like 9 or 10 campuses, but there's a number of large multi-campus districts. So communication with the student, communication with your colleagues in the district, and then the backup is that it won't allow the submission of 2 applications from the same student. So here's a kind of question and comment. A little more than half of my students participating in the program at our campus will be eligible because they have a homeless background. Are there any resources you know about I can share with my students who come from a homelessness, and that's as opposed to foster care? There really are, and I'm delighted to share with you that, thanks to the Walter S. Johnson Foundation, we have a grant where we're working with campuses to kind of do technical assistance and training on resources available for homeless youth. Now, is there a Burton Book Fund to turn to for homeless youth? There's not, but what I go back to is making sure that they're fully utilizing what does exist, which is being independent students for the purposes of the FAFSA, which sounds like a no-brainer, and yet we have really good evidence in California and nationally that many homeless students aren't being treated that way and that they're getting access to priority registration. So those are 2 things, and we will share resources about that, but these are state and federal laws that have been implemented but are not exactly the most straightforward, and so we're seeing a lot of students around the state, it's just, because they're different and because the information isn't as accessible as it could be, not getting access to those benefits. So a few more questions about can the reallocated benefits or Burton Book Fund go to existing students? Just to reiterate, no, they have to go to new students. Here's a point regarding the contract with the bookstore. We have a third-party bookstore that does not do direct billing. So can the student submit the invoice directly, or are program paid and be reimbursed?
So the program will be paid and reimbursed.
Not necessarily the campus support program. This is, we only pay bookstores. And so if that is your specific circumstance, we don't want programs starting to go out and buy books and then get reimbursed from us. We do need a book store agreement. And so if that's your circumstance, be in contact with Carolyn, and we'll discuss it, because that is that's kind of the way that we pay for books. Another question is the definition of required course materials. The definition that we have, and we're very open to hearing if you're getting feedback from you, is that it is listed on the course syllabus. Listed on the course syllabus, so that includes clickers. That is the thing that came up repeatedly. So if it's not listed on the course syllabus, it wouldn't be a required course material. Now, if you think that is not clear enough or not specific enough, we're happy to drill down to another level. But that was the kind of guidance that was provided to us, in order to recognize that not every student is exclusively needing textbooks. Here's a question: is this funding only for foster youth, or can use for other students, like students who are awards of the court, legal guardianship, or temporary homelessness? So again, for the legal guardianship, if a youth exited to legal guardianship on or after age 13, which many do, then they're still eligible. They don't have to be in foster care currently. They just need to have been in foster care on or after age 13. Now, as for award of the court, if they were in a juvenile probation placement, that legally is foster care. So if after age 13 they were in a group home, probation group home, then they are eligible. That is, in California, we use foster care funds to pay for juvenile probation placements out of home. So if a young person says, well, were you in foster care? Well, I was in a group home, a probation group home. If they were in that on or after age 13, then they're equally eligible for the program. And that is, I'm recognizing some additional clarification we should put in the FAQ. Here's a question, Carolyn. If a student purchases a required course material that is not a textbook, do we need to include proof of the syllabus in the invoice?
No, you don't.
Yeah, this is, just as, in terms of directing, using, there's been a few questions about, as campus support professionals, the need is greater than the supply, and, how do we think about that? This is something that we definitely are not in a position to say who is the most in need. You, as people on the campus, the programs, how they work together, the resources, but most importantly, the students. And so we absolutely don't want to be in a position of saying, well, this student and not that student, because we don't know them. And we also don't know how your EOPS program works with your TRIO program, with your DSPS program. The whole ecosystem of your campus. And that is why, and that's kind of hard. And we're getting some kind of questions, which is, it can be hard because we don't want to, pit students against each other, or kind of put a campus support professional in the place where they're having to say you and not you. But I guess what it would really be is looking at the number, looking at what available resources they have. Certainly a student who's not meeting satisfactory academic progress would rise to the top in terms of need. I mean, that's a student who is hanging on by the hair of their chin because they are not getting any financial aid. So let's see, here's a comment. All right, can a student who paid their books before funds become available be able to get a reimbursement? So she said no, but the funds are available as soon as the bookstore is open. So there is no, the funds are available. As soon as you submit your campus application and the bookstore application, there's no time when the money's available. As soon as that student is approved, they can walk to the bookstore and start charging to their account. So there isn't any delay. That's kind of one thing that is very nice. Is the bookstore process easy to understand?
Yeah, I would hope so, and that's obviously clear. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay. It should be a simple process, and if you have any questions, I'm definitely very easy to contact, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any process or any questions about the process.
All right, one question is, how does a campus assess their capacity if they've never done this process before? I think it's a very fair question. It's really, can you add at least two points of contact with the total number of students that you want to get awards. So if you want to, let's say you say we have this number of students, these 10, aren't going to get anything from anyone. They're kind of maybe not getting the financial aid they need, or they're not getting an EOPS book voucher, and I think it's these 10. Well, then you want to sit back and say, well, can I have another contact with these 10 young people twice? The first time to sit down with them to do the application in person, and then the second time to check in with them mid-year to see if they haven't spent the book fund, if they intend to. So you'd be amazed at how many students spend a quarter of it. So they go into the bookstore once, they spend their $40. So that in December, when you are get the report back from the bookstore, like Angela Jones has spent 40 out of 200, there's 160 left, then to reallocate that, it means a second contact with her to say, hey, Angela, you have a balance of 160. We want to see this really help you. Do you need it? And she may say, no, actually my Chafee came through and I bought my second semester books and I don't. And if that's the case, then that's the case. But so the capacity is your ability to make at least likely two contacts. And it may only be one. If a student goes out, gets awarded, you have the initial contact with the application, $200 is not hard to spend. And then your report from the bookstore comes back and it's like, yeah, they spent the $200. Then pretty much that's the totality. So those contacts, as well as a brief year-end survey, completing from us. And so that is really, when I say capacity, how much time it takes to do that. We don't want people to feel like, oh, this is more than I can really do. But we do need you to do those things. So here's a comment. The timeline doesn't really show reps to know that. I'm not sure what that refers to, but we'll try and figure that out. So here's another one, is about the new next up campuses. So we have checked with the Community College Chancellor's Office, and those monies will be available for the fall semester, including, as Carolyn said, the new $5 million expansion. So no, the Burton Book Fund will not be available to KP's campuses, next up campuses, who are getting the new funding. So here's another one. I think, can students return their books and repurchase them with the Burton Book Fund?
Yep, they can.
So that was a yes. All right. So here's one. What criteria will be used to determine how many grants each campuses will receive? Will it be based on last year's grants? What criteria will JBAY use to determine how many grants each campus will receive?
So ideally, we won't have to cut any awards, but if we do need to cut some, will be determined by the number of foster youth attending that college, and then the distribution across the campuses that are participating.
Yes, which really speaks particularly to the community colleges, the CSUs and the UCs. Many of you remember that Deborah Pruitt from our organization did a statewide survey of the number of foster youth on CSUs and UCs. But in the community colleges, the Community College Data Mart actually has that information. Some campuses is more or less accurate, but given that that's all we do have, that is what it's based on. Is so to try and, the best case scenario is everyone gets what they request, but if not, it's kind of reapportioned based on how many students are foster youth are on your campus. Here's another one. Do we need to submit the student FAFSA verification?
No, we do not.
Okay, so that, I know that was a no. So lots of great questions. Let's see if there are any last one. So given the timeline, reps would need to assess how many students have need and which amount of them have the greatest need. But that is only possible if every student is knowledgeable and proactive in reaching out before they start the semester. And many don't find out about it until they're already on campus. So I'll take this one. So I guess if I were a campus representative, and certainly if you participated in the Burton Book Fund in the past, I'd probably, this is how many you're setting aside for your people. Based on your professional experience, like, do I have 15 young people or 8 young people or 20 young people who will probably need this? And so, we're not asking you to, kind of nail these names down before you make these requests. It's kind of based on your knowledge of your student population, about the young people who get services in your program, and your understanding of just this kind of student population generally. And so, do the best you can. We know you don't have a crystal ball. We know it's June 22nd. School hasn't even started. And if you want to have individual consultation about that, we're happy to do it. But it's really, how many foster youth do you think are going to show up on your campus and could really use this help? We'd love to know the numbers by campus who are not meeting satisfactory academic progress. That would certainly, the number who are foster youth and not meeting satisfactory academic progress, they would certainly be a target population. But yeah, we understand we're asking you to develop an estimate. And again, we're happy to work with you on that if you'd like. So I realize we're after the 11 o'clock hour, lots of really good questions, and a lot of similar ones. But if we didn't answer your specific question, or we didn't kind of address, or the kind of caveat that you want to discuss, this conversation is just getting started. And unlike in years past, there's not going to be the gate's not going to be thrown up, and then we're not going to race through it in terms of the students, where you're, there's like where the applications are pounding through the door, and then in 1 minute we use up all the money. So instead, it's much more deliberative. It's much more, what is the needs of the student on my campus? Let me put that request in. You'll get that information, and then you're going to have the time to do that work with your students. That was really the intention of this as change. I'm sure there'll be unintended consequences. There always are. But this is our best effort to take that urgency out of it, which massively just, was unfair. We had campuses who had their campus agreement approved and their bookstore agreement approved, but by the time they were able to sit down with a young person, all the funds had been used. So, we want to really avoid situations like that, because then those campuses weren't receiving anything. So it's, our hope also is by making this more, measurable and strategic, that we're able to get more funding for it. Currently, the Burton Book Fund is funded by one grant from the Ticket to Dream Foundation, which is spectacular, and the California Community Colleges Foundation. Now together, those two grants only fund less than $50,000 of the $250,000 program. The rest is raised through our individual donors. We want to change that. We want to see more philanthropic support. And so that's just another thing to throw out. But in order to do that, we have to be able to show it makes a difference in a way that we really haven't in the past. We've said, wow, we helped a lot of young people, but we weren't maximizing financial aid, and we weren't very deliberately trying to increase this contact. So some people will see the rationale for these changes and be okay with them, and others will like the way it used to be. And so we appreciate that, and hope that you'll work with us this year to move the process forward and get a lot of books out to students. We know the old process resulted in only about 2/3 of the money being used. And that was particularly painful because we know the need is so great on campuses. So again, the conversation is far from over. Let's keep the questions coming. And one last question is maximum age. There is not a maximum age. So again, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and attention, and we hope everyone has a great summer and a great school year. Goodbye.